What's going on, everybody? Today I'm back with another tier list video. This time I will be ranking my 20 favorite horror movies in honor of Halloween. I am also going to post two shorter videos where I talk about the first 10 movies and then the second 10. So if you would rather watch those shorter form videos, then you should be able to find those on my channel shortly after I upload this video. In a few days, I am also going to be releasing a video similar to this where I rank all 30 spy movies I've seen. So subscribe or turn on post notifications if you want to be one of the first people to see that video. As you can see, I've changed the names of the tiers on this list, and that's because I feel like these names for the tiers are easier for you all to understand how much I enjoyed the movies. The naming for the tiers was inspired by another YouTuber by the name of Austin Burke. So if you guys enjoy videos about movies, you should definitely check out his channel. He makes a lot of fun, high quality videos. There will be only one franchise on this list, and that is because that's the only franchise which has more than one of my 20 favorite horror movies. So I'll be placing all of the movies on this list as we go, ending with that one franchise. And then at the end of the video, I will go back through and order each tier from my most to least favorite, so that at the very end of the video, you will be able to see my ranking both as tiers and as best to worst. Also, I normally would have okay, meh, bad, and the worst tiers below these ones, but I got rid of them for this video because since these are my favorite horror movies, none of them are less than good for me. A note that I would like to add before we start is that I didn't like watching horror movies until recently, so a lot of the classics I haven't had a chance to see yet, but I did watch a few in preparation for this video. So that's probably why you might not see some movies here that you expected to see. And the last thing before we get started, I will be giving some spoilers for most of the movies on this list. So I'm going to try to set up the video to have chapters so that if you haven't seen one of these movies, you can skip over my discussion of that movie and then continue watching after that if you would like to avoid those spoilers. But now getting into the rankings, first up we have Alien. Some people may consider this more of a sci-fi or space movie, but for me this movie is horror at its core, so that's why I have it here. I think that this movie gave us one of the best and most unique creature designs from any horror movie, especially back when it came out in 1979. The way that the story develops throughout the movie had me constantly wondering who was going to die next and who was going to make it out at the end. And that's ultimately one of the main things that I want out of a horror movie, so I really enjoyed this one. So we're starting off this list strong with a movie that I'm going to put all the way up in the amazing tier. Up next we have Ready or Not. I feel like this movie is a bit of a diamond in the rough. I had never heard of this until my sister showed it to me, and when she described the plot of a girl visiting her fiance's family for a customary game of hide and seek with the whole family throughout their mansion, I thought there was no way this could be good, but I was pleasantly surprised. The acting is mostly strong, and they managed to take what seems like another spin-off of a tired concept and make it intriguing and made me want to keep watching until the end. So while it's far from my favorite horror movie, I'm going to put Ready or Not firmly in the good tier. The third movie on this list is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. This is a very small scale movie, and I love that about it. Essentially, the entire movie takes place in a morgue, and as a mortician and his son examine a body and discover mysterious clues about the way that she died. And as they go further and further with the autopsy, through more and more suspicious, creepy things start happening around the morgue. And overall, I thought the mystery of this movie was laid out very well, and that mystery is part of what carries The Autopsy of Jane Doe into the great tier for me. Up next, we have Happy Death Day. This is a movie which I never really heard very much hype about, and when the sequel came out, it seemed like there wasn't a lot of hype for that movie either, but I had a lot of fun with Happy Death Day. I enjoyed the Groundhog Day theme, but obviously with a murderous twist. And the time travel element to the movie, with this repeating loop, can sometimes get confusing and it doesn't always follow its own rules, but that doesn't totally ruin the movie for me. And overall, I thought this movie was a good enough, enjoyable horror movie that wasn't trying to be one of the best movies ever, so I'm going to put it on the good tier. Now, the next movie on this list is our first of a couple A24 films that will be here, The Witch. This movie was my first introduction to Anya Taylor-Joy as an actress, and it sold me immediately. She gives an incredible performance as this farm girl in the 1600s New England, whose family is seemingly haunted by some sort of spirit or witch from the forest. This is another smaller scale type of movie that moves kind of slow and doesn't have a ton of dialogue, but those are all very intentional choices to build this eerie atmosphere that I thought worked really well. The first time I watched The Witch, it really did make me uncomfortable, but in the way I want a horror movie to make me uncomfortable, so I'm definitely going to put this in the great tier. And now we move on to another movie that really creeped me out the first time I saw it, and it still does creep me out now that I've seen it 3 times, and that movie is The Ritual. This is another one that on the surface seems like it could very easily be another copy and paste story of hikers getting lost in the forest, stumbling across a creepy house along the way, and being hunted down by a mysterious creature. But even though that setup probably sounds ripe for failure, I think this movie pulls off what it's going for brilliantly. They keep giving you small glances at the creature throughout the movie, but never show too much of it until the very end, which definitely adds to the horror of it all. 90% of horror is in the unknown, at least for me, so holding back what's really happening to these characters and what they're being hunted by makes this a hair raiser for me for sure. This is a movie that I had no real expectations for when I first watched it, but now I'm firmly going to place The Ritual in the amazing tier. Up next now we have another one of my personal favorites, Get Out. This was Jordan Peele's directorial debut, and he completely killed it. Nearly every single aspect of this movie has some element of importance or a connection to another scene, character, or plot point. It's very clear watching Get Out that a lot of effort and attention to detail was put into it from start to finish. Most of the movie falls more into the psychological horror category, which is generally my favorite type of horror, so that also helps this movie rise up this list. It also has a unique concept with these older white people switching brains with young black men so that they can have a younger, fitter body and live longer. So overall, this movie has a lot of interesting ideas and pulls off most of them extremely well. And I'm definitely going to put Get Out in the amazing tier for now, but it is a contender for that best tier when I rank all these movies at the end of the video. Piggybacking off of that, we now move on to the other Jordan Peele directed movie on this list, 2019's Us. This is the movie that really sold me on Peele as a great horror director, because while I do slightly prefer Get Out, this movie proved that that first success wasn't a fluke, and I actually prefer the concept of Us and was scared more by it. The story of there being an entire other reality that sort of exists under the surface with an evil version of everyone living on the surface world where we live is just so fascinating to me. I also felt like this movie had a better musical score than Get Out, especially with the theme song, which is sort of a demented version of the song I Got 5 on It. I love that song and listen to both the original and movie versions on a pretty regular basis. So while Us doesn't quite measure up to Get Out, and is just a little sloppier with its execution, it still had plenty of strong elements for me to put it firmly on the great tier. Moving on now, we have the 2017 remake of a classic Stephen King story, It. While I have never read the book, and I also was very disappointed by the sequel. I was thoroughly impressed by this movie. I enjoyed that it followed a group of younger kids rather than the typical like late teen, early 20 age cast that horror movies usually have. Um, and I think the fact that they are young kids helps to sell the idea of Pennywise as a villain who preys on people's fears, because children are usually the most fearful of us all. I had a lot of fun with this movie, but it didn't really stick with me over time, so I think I'm going to place this one in the good tier. Up next is the 10th movie on this list, and the only foreign movie on the list, The Platform. This was a really interesting concept, which is also a clear allegory for class inequality, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. These people are brought into a facility that they don't really know anything about, and they end up being put in this structure which essentially works as a bunch of two-person jail cells stacked on top of each other. And the only food source comes from a platform which starts at the top and slowly moves down level by level, with the lower levels only being allowed to eat what's left behind by the people above them. And the story continues to evolve from there, but I won't spoil it any further than that. I just thought that this was a really interesting movie that had multiple scenes that put me on edge of my seat waiting for what was about to happen. And I'm going to put the platform firmly on the good tier. Now that we're halfway through the list, I'm going to give a quick recap of what we've ranked so far. I have Ready or Not, Happy Death Day, It, and The Platform on the good tier. The Autopsy of Jane Doe, The Witch, and Us on the great tier. Alien, The Ritual, and Get Out on the amazing tier. And nothing in the best tier yet.